I think if any of us want to do the things that we want to do for our country and for the people who live in it, we have to honestly and aggressively attack the universities in this country.
American universities have long been the envy of the world. They're home to groundbreaking research, global talent, and innovation hubs that drive the US economy and global economy as well. Yet, under Trump, this crown jewel of American soft power is under siege. His administration has slashed funding, weaponized ideological battles, and stifled academic freedom. But what's the real cost of this war on higher education? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. There is no area where America's global dominance is more pronounced than in higher education. With just 4% of the world's population, the US boasts nearly 3/4 of the world's top universities. This is not just an academic achievement, it's a strategic advantage. Universities fuel the economy, drive technological progress, and attract the world's brightest minds. Yet, this pillar of American strength is now facing an existential crisis, not from external threats, but from within. Trump's administration has declared war on these institutions, cutting funding, restricting research, and launching a cultural purge against wokeness. US Vice President J.D. Vance, one of Trump's closest allies, declared that Trump's universities must be aggressively attacked.
What we want to do in this movement in this country, I think, are fundamentally dependent on going through a set of very hostile institutions, specifically the universities, which control the knowledge in our society, which control what we call truth and what we call falsity, that provides research that gives credibility to some of the most ridiculous ideas that exist in our country. And so I'm excited to close this conference with this particular set of remarks, because I think if any of us want to do the things that we want to do for our country and for the people who live in it, we have to honestly and aggressively attack the universities in this country.
This assault is not just political theater. The administration's policies are already reshaping academia in profound ways, freezing research grants, slashing funds, and suppressing academic discourse.
No, I want to bring the schools back to the states. And, I've said it 100 times, we're ranked at the bottom of the list, and yet we spend more. We're ranked number one for course per student. We're ranked at the bottom of the list in education. And I know if I bring it back to Iowa, Indiana, Idaho, all these great states, I think I could say 40 states, I want to bring it back. 10 states won't be perfect, 5 states will be probably not so good, but they will be every bit as good as Norway and Denmark and Sweden and all of the states that are rated at the top. If you tell me about Indiana and some of these great states that run really well, Iowa, you tell me about those states, and if they run their own education, they're going to do a lot better than somebody sitting in Washington, D.C. that couldn't care less about the pupils out in the Midwest.
As China ramps up its investments in higher education, America is choosing to dismantle its own. The question is, can the US afford to undermine its greatest competitive advantage? For years, the term woke meant being aware of racial and social injustices. But in the hands of the Trump administration, wokeness has become a slur, a catch-all term used to attack anything remotely progressive. Whether it's diversity initiatives, climate science, or historical analysis, the word woke is being wielded as a weapon to justify defunding entire academic fields. Ironically, some of the same politicians who decry woke ideology built their careers in the very institutions they now seek to dismantle. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis studied at Yale and Harvard, while Ted Cruz attended Princeton and Harvard. In fact, President Trump himself went to an Ivy League school. He went to Wharton. And Vice President J.D. Vance went to Yale. Their crusade against elite universities seemed less principled and more political. The most direct attack has come through funding cuts. Federal grants fuel US research covering everything from cancer treatments to artificial intelligence. Duke University, for example, receives over $860 million annually from Washington. These funds support life-saving research and educate future scientists. But under Trump administration, these grants have been slashed, putting entire fields of study at risk. One devastating move was the capping of university overhead reimbursements at 15%, down from the previous 40 to 50%. This may sound like a bureaucratic adjustment, but it has profound consequences. These overhead costs cover labs, facilities, and essential infrastructure. Without them, research grinds to a halt. Michigan State University has already warned that these cuts could halt construction of $330 million worth of research facility dedicated to studying cancer, cardiovascular disease, and neuroscience. Beyond the financial cuts, Trump administration has launched a cultural war on universities. It started with critique of wokeness, an accusation that elite institutions had become dominated by left-wing ideology. But what began as a battle against campus political correctness has turned into a full-blown purge of academic programs. The government has begun scrubbing words like diversity and inclusion from research proposals, shutting down entire initiatives without review. Even more dystopian, Trump's allies have begun punishing universities for allowing certain viewpoints on campus. Recent policies have targeted professors and students who express controversial opinions on topics like Israel and Palestine, leading to a new form of ideological censorship. Instead of fostering debate, universities are being forced into submission. The impact of this war on academia goes far beyond politics. US universities are central to global research, driving innovation that benefits the entire world. In the year 2022 alone, US institutions spent nearly $98 billion on research, accounting for 13% of the nation's total research and development investment. Federal funding is the backbone of this system, supporting critical advancements in medicine, engineering, and technology. Consider the mapping of the human genome, a $3 billion project that revolutionized medicine. Because it was funded by the government, the research was made publicly available within 24 hours of discovery, allowing scientists worldwide to build upon it. This type of groundbreaking innovation is now under threat. Research universities also fuel the economy. Studies show that the return of investment in academic research can exceed 40%. University spin-offs create high-growth companies with radical innovations. Without federal support, many of these ventures would never get off the ground. While the US sabotages its own academic institutions, China is doing the very opposite. Last week, Beijing announced a massive increase in funding for research and technology, aiming to surpass the US as the world's leader in scientific innovation. Chinese universities are rapidly climbing global rankings, fueled by aggressive government investment and a deliberate strategy to attract top talent. America, meanwhile, seems intent on replicating the worst aspects of China's past, stifling academic freedom, enforcing ideological conformity, and crippling its own research infrastructure. It's a self-inflicted wound that could take generations to repair. The damage isn't just theoretical or even hypothetical, it's already happening. Universities are cancelling research projects, scaling back PhD programs, and losing top-tier talent to other countries. Without a well-funded independent research ecosystem, the risks of falling behind in everything from AI to biotechnology is absolutely real. But perhaps the greatest irony is that Trump's attack on universities is framed as a battle against elitism, when in reality it will hurt working class and middle class students the most. Cuts to research funding mean fewer scholarships, fewer teaching assistant positions, and fewer opportunities for upward mobility. The very students Trump claims to champion will find higher education increasingly out of reach.
For many of my students, there's already a feeling that nobody cares about me, that I'm responsible for myself, like nobody gives a beep about me. And I think that this very much would affirm that for them. I think that it also would cause them to say, well, why is it that I am not important enough just because I happen to be brown, just because I happen to be a minority, just because I happen to be low income? Why should I have less than because of choices that other people made? Kids who are from families that are low income, the children did not choose to be low income.
The war on woke colleges is not just an attack on ideology, it's an attack on America's future. Universities are not just academic institutions, they're engines of economic growth, scientific discovery, and global influence. The question now is whether the US will continue to undermine its greatest strategic advantage or recognize the vital role higher education plays in maintaining its global leadership. In a world where knowledge is power, can America afford to wage war on its own intellectual strength? Thank you for watching Statecraft.